What is up, everybody? Mr. Curtis here. Welcome to topic 2.2, the Mongols, making of the modern world, circa 1200 to 1450. Here's the deal. You might be asking yourself, hey, Mr. Curtis, I don't understand why the Mongols are in the unit that you said in the last video on trade routes. Great question, student who just asked that. Here's the deal. The Mongols are going to create the largest empire, land empire, in human history. And it's along one of the most active trade routes in human history, the Silk Road. So here's the deal. This is the Mongol Empire, the largest land empire in history. Now, it's not the largest empire ever because the British are going to have an empire in the late early 1900s, but that's going to be all over the world across oceans. But this empire stretches from Korea all the way over to the Ukraine, all the way down into modern day Iraq, Iran, coming across here all the way south to just above, just to the north of Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos down here. So this is a huge empire. And if you know anything about the Mongols, which I'm assuming and I'm guessing that all of you know a lot about the Mongols are from this area right here, which are called the steppes of Central Asia. They are constantly throughout their history a thorn in the side of the Chinese dynasties. So much so that the Chinese dynasties build and constantly improve and repair on the Great Wall of China, which is located right here. But the Mongols are nomads from this area known as the steppes of Central Asia. They migrate, they move around, they live off the land, which is a huge advantage militarily. If you think about it, if you take a step back and you think all of the armies throughout all of history, including modern militaries, have to bring supplies with them. They have to bring food with them. They have to bring supplies in terms of military weapons. They have to bring caravans of stuff with them. The Mongols are nomadic, so they move fast. They're used to traveling from place to place, which makes them kind of ideal militarily. What's odd about this is the Mongols are nomadic, so they don't have a written language. They aren't quote unquote educated in the traditional sense, especially compared to Chinese Confucian scholars. But they do have regular interactions with the Chinese. So they do have a lot of those inventions that have been coming from China for 1,000 years, have been creeping up and made their way through interaction with the Mongols into the hands of the Mongols. They're crazy skilled at horseback riding. They're crazy skilled at archery. There's a story of that a Mongol a warrior on a horse could be riding full speed on horseback, shooting an arrow, and hit a target 100 yards away, which is the size of a football field. I don't know if that's true, but if it is, that's totally crazy and insane. Most of it prior to Genghis Khan taking over in Mongolia was based on clans. And a clan is just a fancy way of saying like your local family or relationships or ties was your clan. And those clans in the Mongolia often went to war with each other. And Genghis Khan unites these clans together to form, essentially becoming himself the Great Khan. And then under this unification, because when people are unified, it's easier for them to fight other people, they go out and they start conquering. Here's the deal with the Mongols. Every historical rule, they are the exception to. Nomads are not supposed to be able to do this. Nomads and anyone is not supposed to invade Russia in the winter and do it successfully, and they do it. They are the exception to everything. This quick thing here, obviously this is not a real person, but this is real armor. This is what the horse would look like. This is how someone who was a Mongolian warrior would dress. Here's the deal with the government under this crazy, first of all, you'll notice it's split up into 4 sections. Again, too big for one person to rule, similar to the Incan Empire that we talked about. There is the Great Khan who kind of oversees everyone else, but all these people kind of have local authority, some autonomy over what they're doing. There's really 4 regions. There's what was previously known as the Song Dynasty here. There's obviously Mongolia here. There is the Golden Horde here, which is Russia. There's the Islamic Caliphate, which they overthrew here, called the Ilkhanate, which is going to be this area in Persia and the Middle East. And then there's this kind of Central Asian part here. Each has its own, like I said, each has its own kind of government structure and own Khan. What's interesting is you would think that they would go in and just like destroy everything because they were illiterate and not traditionally educated. But they're really tolerant, except when they conquer you. As I'm sure you are well aware, it was resist and die, or submit and live. And if you did not submit, they ruthlessly kill people. If you did submit, you were able to live, and they allowed you to continue practicing your own religion and kind of let you essentially, for the most part, be. So I want to focus in on two regions, China and what they did, and then Russia and what they did, and then we'll probably in class compare the two. First off, when the Mongols take over China, they name the new dynasty the Yuan dynasty, which is a Chinese name. And China is the biggest threat to Mongolian power. China is the place everyone has wanted to be, and it's just to the south of where the Mongols reside. When the Mongols take over, they have a centralized government. The emperor, who is eventually going to become Kublai Khan, is probably the most famous of the Yuan emperors, is going to use the Mandate of Heaven and, again, a Chinese dynastic name. So they're going to keep some Chinese ideas. And by keeping some Chinese ideas, they're hoping to bring and increase their legitimacy, meaning that people will be like, yeah, they're Mongolian, but like they're kind of keeping some Chinese stuff, so we're cool with that. They do flip the social class structure around. Confucian scholars, who are a threat to their power, because the Confucian scholars held power before, and they're very educated, are brought to the bottom of the social class structure. Which, if you think about it, the Confucian scholars were at the top under the Song dynasty and most historically dynasties in China. Now we drop them to the bottom and we put the merchants who have historically been low and put them on the top. So it's going to increase trade. It's going to increase merchant activity. It's going to encourage people to become merchants. And it's going to flip things. And you take your biggest threat, which are the Confucian scholars, and you put them on the bottom. We're going to ban intermarriage between Mongols and Chinese. We're worried that if Mongolian people marry Chinese people, the Chinese culture, which is so strong, will kind of gobble up the Mongolian culture, and the kids will not be raised in Mongolian ways. They'll be raised in Chinese ways. This is pretty similar to immigrants who come to the United States today. A lot of times by the second and third generation, those children of the first generation immigrants lose the old way culture. They stop speaking Italian or Spanish or whatever language it is of the people who came here. The third generation doesn't speak it anymore, and they become Americanized. Similar here, the Mongols see that, and they're trying to limit that. The beginning of the end of this is there's two unsuccessful attempts at invading Japan. So they do try to invade Japan twice, coming across the Sea of Japan here. They have to rely on the Confucian scholars to build the boats for them. And the Confucian scholars, it's believed, not 100% sure, kind of mess things up on purpose. So in both events, the Mongols get to the shores of Japan and a huge storm comes and almost destroys all the Mongolian ships. Which the Japanese people refer to as the kamikaze winds that came in and saved them. Along with China, there's Russia. In Russia, it's going to be governed totally different. Russia is going to be completely decentralized under Mongol rule. It was decentralized before Mongol rule. It's going to continue to be decentralized during Mongol rule, which in a sense, and I'm not trying to confuse you here, is the similarity because the Mongols are going to keep the existing government structure in place of what it was before. However, the difference is that the two government systems are different. The Mongols are going to have local princes in Russia pay tribute. And again, that's a word we use in a past video, which is basically money. They basically say to local princes, we will let you stay in power, but you need to pay us monthly, semi-annually, annually, some type of money or food goods in order to maintain in power. The Mongols don't like Russia. It's cold. It's not a nomadic really place to be. It's hard for their horses, and most Mongolian leaders of the Golden Horde, of the Russian Mongol section, really kind of settle down here around the Black Sea, which the climate is similar to Mongolia. These Mongol princes are going to collect taxes. They're going to collect on behalf of these Russian princes are going to collect taxes on behalf of the Mongols, and they're going to keep some of that tax revenue. They're going to, instead of charging like 30% taxes, the princes are going to charge 50%, give 30% to the Mongols, and keep 20% for themselves. So these princes are going to gain a lot of power and legitimacy through collecting taxes for the Mongols. As a result of this, a lot of serfdom is going to rise. Because of the invasions of the Mongols, and the Mongols were terrorized people. They were terrorizing people when they invaded, that people turned to serfdom. Similar to what we talked about in the Western Europe video, these people are going to say, I will give up my essentially freedom. I will work on your land. I will swear loyalty to you. And in return, please protect me. And that's going to really increase. Serfdom in Russia is going to exist until the 1860s and really beyond that in Russia. For the next 300 years, and this is going to come up later, this is going to eventually be contextualization for this, so keep this in the back of your mind. Maybe give this a little star, a little highlight, whatever you want to do. Russia is going to look east for the next 300 years, meaning they're going to look this way. While Europe, Western Europe is going through, which is over here, while Western Europe is going through their age of exploration and a lot of scientific advances, Russia's really focused east, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. That's what they're doing. In terms of economy, there's this huge facilitation of trade among the Mongols. There's a saying or a story that you could walk along the Silk Road with 2 gold bags filled with gold in your hand and a gold plate on your head, and no one would touch or even think of robbing you because they knew the Mongols would find you and hunt you down. So trade is very safe along the Silk Road during this time. There's a huge increase of this commerce along the Silk Road. So all the stuff we talked about in the last video, porcelain, silk, advances are going to travel under this. Mongols are going to encourage the building of new roads, and they facilitate that building of new roads as the Yuan dynasty, which also allows their military to travel easier. But it's also going to bring a whole bunch of new groups into this trade system that weren't in the trade system before. There's going to be a lot more influence with China, and that Chinese influence is going to go into Russia. Coming down here for a second, coming into the Chinese influence is going to be up here into Russia, which wasn't there really before to this degree, and down here into Persia. Also, as Western Europeans get their hands on these goods, because the goods are now making it all the way to Western Europe by like the 1350s, Europeans are going to want their hands on it. They like the silk, they like the cotton, they like the porcelain, they like this stuff, and they want more of that stuff. Last but not least is cultural developments and interaction. There's this huge, besides these products being spread, besides it being safe, there is this huge spread of knowledge and advancements across Europe, Asia, and into Africa. And a lot of it is as a result of the Mongol Empire and this ability to trade and move around so easily. A lot of Chinese and Islamic advancements are going to make it to Western Europe. I can't stress how important this is enough, and the Mongols are the center of so much because they're going to really be the ones who, in a sense, help facilitate these ideas and products getting to Western Europe, which the Western Europeans are going to use. Some of these inventions from China include gunpowder, the printing press, and astronomy. And you might be like, who cares about astronomy? Well, you can't travel on the ocean without great knowledge of astronomy because you have no idea where you're going unless you're following the stars. We're also going to see ideas from the Middle East, which is the astrolabe, which we'll talk about in class, which allows you to look at the stars and know where you are in the world and possibly what time of the day it is. Also, the numeral system, which comes from the Islamic Empire and from the Middle East. Chemistry, algebra, all of these things are going to spread under Mongol rule and are going to really kind of become much more widespread as opposed to what it was before. That's a lot, and that's the Mongols, and there's more to it, and we'll talk more in class, but as always, if you have any questions, please write it down. Ask me in class. That's all I got. I'm out.